I know your mind is still running tonight, turning over the day like a stone too heavy to set down. Let me tell you a story about a girl who lost her way and found her way home. And perhaps, in her journey, you will find your rest. And Dorothy walked to the gate of the Wicked Witch's castle and unlocked it with steady hands. The Cowardly Lion stepped out, blinking in the sunlight, his mane soft and his heart full. "You set me free," he whispered, and she smiled. Together they went inside, and Dorothy called the Winkies together, the yellow people who worked and wept and obeyed the witch for so many years. "You are no longer slaves," she told them. "You belong to yourselves now." And oh, the joy that rose from their yellow hearts. They danced, they sang, they feasted, and they made that day a holiday forever. The lion watched them with his amber eyes and sighed. "If our friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, were only with us," he said, "I should be quite happy." "Then let us rescue them," said Dorothy gently. And she asked the Winkies if they would help. They said yes, yes, 1,000 times yes, for she had given them back their lives. So they went out, a small and hopeful group, across the day and into the next, until they came to the rocky plain where the Tin Woodman lay. Oh, he was in a sad way dented, bent, his axe nearby with a rusted blade and a broken handle. The Winkies lifted him tenderly in their arms, so carefully as if he were made of something precious, and they carried him back to the Yellow Castle. Dorothy shed a few tears along the way, and the lion walked quietly beside her, his great head bowed with compassion. When they arrived, Dorothy asked the Winkies if any were tinsmiths. "Oh yes, some of us are very good tinsmiths," they said. And so the tinsmiths came, with all their tools in woven baskets, and they set to work in a big yellow room. They hammered and twisted and bent and soldered and polished and pounded on the legs and body and head of the Tin Woodman for 3 days and 4 nights. And at last he was straightened out into his old form. His joints moved as well as ever. Yes, there were patches on him, but he was never a vain man, and the patches did not bother him at all. When he walked into Dorothy's room, he thanked her with such happiness that he wept tears of joy. Dorothy wiped every tear carefully from his face with her apron so that his joints would not rust. And her own tears fell thick and fast too, but those tears did not need to be wiped away. The lion wiped his eyes with the tip of his tail until it was quite wet, and he had to go outside and hold it in the sun to dry. Let that tenderness settle over you. Let the joy of mended things soak into your bones. You are allowed to be put back together too. "If we only had the Scarecrow with us again," said the Tin Woodman, "I should be quite happy." "Then we must find him," said Dorothy. So they walked again, all that day and part of the next, until they came to the tall tree where the winged monkeys had tossed the Scarecrow's clothes. The trunk was so smooth no one could climb it, but the Woodman said, "I'll chop it down." And yes, the Winkies' goldsmith had made an axe handle of solid gold, and others had polished the blade until it glistened like burnished silver. With a few swift chops, The tree fell over with a crash, and the Scarecrow's clothes tumbled down onto the ground. Dorothy picked them up, had the Winkies carry them back to the castle, and there they stuffed them with nice, clean straw. And behold, there was the Scarecrow, as good as ever, thanking them over and over again for saving him. Now that they were all together, Dorothy and her friends spent a few happy days in the Yellow Castle, where everything they needed was close at hand. But one day, the thought of Aunt Em rose gently in Dorothy's heart, and she said, "We must go back to Oz and claim his promise." "Yes," said the Woodman, "at last I shall get my heart." "And I shall get my brains," added the Scarecrow joyfully. "And I shall get my courage," said the Lion thoughtfully. "And I shall get back to Kansas," cried Dorothy, clapping her hands. "Oh, let us start for the Emerald City tomorrow." And so they decided. The next day, they called the Winkies together and bade them goodbye. The Winkies were sorry to see them go. They had grown so fond of the Tin Woodman that they begged him to stay and rule over them, but he smiled and shook his head. So instead, they gave gifts: golden collars for Toto and the Lion, a diamond-studded bracelet for Dorothy, a gold-headed walking stick for the Scarecrow, and for the Tin Woodman a silver oil, can inlaid with gold and set with precious jewels. Everyone made a pretty speech, and they shook hands until their arms ached. Before she left, Dorothy went to the witch's cupboard to fill her basket with food. There she saw the golden cap. It was pretty, and when she tried it on, it fitted her exactly. She did not know its charm, but she liked the way it sat on her head, so she wore it and tucked her sunbonnet into the basket. Then, prepared and surrounded by 3 cheers and many good wishes, they started for the Emerald City. Now you must remember there was no road, no path, between the castle of the Wicked Witch and the Emerald City. When the 4 travelers had gone in search of the witch, she had sent the winged monkeys to carry them. But now they had to walk, and walking is different from being carried. They knew they must go straight east, toward the rising sun, and they started off in the right way. But at noon, when the sun was directly overhead, they could not tell east from west. So they were lost in the great fields of buttercups and yellow daisies. They kept walking, however, and when night came, the moon rose bright and full. They lay down among the sweet-smelling yellow flowers and slept soundly until morning. All but the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, who never slept at all, but watched over their friends with quiet patience. Perhaps, as you lie here now, you can feel that same gentle watchfulness around you. You don't need to do anything tonight. Just listen. Just rest. The next morning, the sun was behind a cloud, but they started on as if they were quite sure which way they were going. "If we walk far enough," said Dorothy, "we shall surely sometime come to some place." But day by day passed away, and still they saw nothing before them but the scarlet fields. The Scarecrow began to grumble a little. "We have surely lost our way," he said, "and unless we find it again, I shall never get my brains." "Nor I my heart," declared the Tin Woodman. "It seems to me I can scarcely wait. This is a very long journey." "You see," said the Cowardly Lion with a whimper, "I haven't the courage to keep tramping forever without getting anywhere at all." And then Dorothy lost heart. She sat down on the grass, and her companions sat down with her. Ch.8 found that for the first time in his life, he was too tired to chase a butterfly that flew past his head. He put out his tongue and panted, looking at Dorothy as if to ask, "What should we do next?" And then, in that still, quiet moment, Dorothy had an idea. "Suppose we call the field mice," she said. "They could probably tell us the way to the Emerald City." "And to be sure they could," cried the Scarecrow. "Why didn't we think of that before?" So Dorothy blew the little whistle that the Queen of the Mice had given her, which she had always carried about her neck. In a few minutes, they heard the pattering of tiny feet, and many small gray mice came running up to her. Among them was the Queen herself, who asked in her squeaky little voice, "What can I do for my friends?" "We have lost our way," said Dorothy. "Can you tell us where the Emerald City is?" "Certainly," answered the Queen. "But it is a great way off, for you have had it at your backs all this time." Then she noticed Dorothy's golden cap and said, "Why don't you use the charm of the cap and call the winged monkeys to you? They will carry you to the City of Oz in less than an hour." "I didn't know there was a charm," said Dorothy in surprise. "What is it?" "It is written inside the golden cap," replied the Queen. "But if you are going to call the winged monkeys, we must run away, for they are full of mischief and think it great fun to plague us." "Won't they hurt me?" asked the girl anxiously. "Oh no," said the Queen. "They must obey the wearer of the cap. Goodbye." And she scampered out of sight, with all the mice hurrying after her. Dorothy looked inside the golden cap and found some words written on the lining. She put the cap upon her head, and standing on her left foot, she said, "Ep-P, Pep-P, Cac-Key." "What did you say?" asked the Scarecrow, who did not know what she was doing. "Hillo, hollo, hello," Dorothy went on, standing this time on her right foot. "Hello," replied the Tin Woodman calmly, and Dorothy smiled. "Ziz-zai, zuz-zai, zik," said Dorothy, now standing on both feet. And that was the end of the charm. They heard a great chattering and flapping of wings as the band of winged monkeys flew up to them. The king bowed low before Dorothy. "What is your command?" he asked. "We wish to go to the Emerald City," said the child, "and we have lost our way." "We will carry you," replied the king. And as soon as he spoke, two of the monkeys caught Dorothy gently in their arms and flew away with her. Others took the Scarecrow, the Woodman, and the Lion, and one little monkey seized Toto, who tried hard to bite him but soon settled down. The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman were rather frightened at first, remembering how badly the winged monkeys had treated them before. But they saw that no harm was intended, so they rode through the air quite cheerfully, looking down at the pretty gardens and woods far below. And Dorothy found herself riding easily between two of the biggest monkeys, one of them the king himself. They had made a chair of their hands, and they were so careful not to hurt her. The wind moved gently through her hair, and the world unfolded beneath her like a soft, slow dream. Let that feeling of being carried home wash over you. Let the steady rhythm of the flight soothe your breath. You have wandered far today, but you are safe now. So Dorothy was carried at last toward the glittering spires of the Emerald City. Tomorrow, we will follow her down the yellow brick road together. Share this story with someone who needs rest and subscribe to Sleep Factory for more. You've done enough tonight. Rest now. Sleep well, dear friend.